First thing I'm going to do is drive. Beginning of this week, my 10-year-old went on a field trip to Bentonville, about 4 hours from here. He wanted me and his mom to go along. And I, of course, wanted to take the motorcycle, but leaving at 5 o'clock, I was half asleep. My wife managed to talk me out of it, so we ended up gauging it all the way down there. So we drive 4 hours down there and go to the Crystal Bridges Museum. Now, I'm all for museums. I think museums are pretty cool. Several years back, we went to Discovery Museum in Little Rock, and it was fascinating. Kids learned a lot of cool stuff, yay. Anyway, we go down to the Crystal Bridges Museum, and we go in there, and they take us on a tour. They called it the Perseverance Tour. And pretty much they led us right past all the cool stuff. I mean, hell, they got Rosie the Riveter there. And I'll go get into that in a minute. But the whole museum, out of all the cool stuff they had in there, they showed the kids 3 different pieces of art. I'm not even going to say exhibits, but just pieces of art. And none of the lectures, each of them had a 30-minute lecture. Not once did they really get into anything about art or making art or such as that. Now, granted, they did get into some of the emotions and influences that went in behind the art, but basically it was just all propaganda and indoctrination. I mean, these are 10-year-old kids, and instead of talking about art, and art is cool and there's fascinating stuff, they're talking about white privilege and slavery and Oprah Winfrey. The tour guide actually went on this 10-minute speech about how the artist or the subject of the art or something like that was friends with Oprah Winfrey. And she's like, oh, y'all are 10, you don't know who Oprah Winfrey is. She's kind of like Ellen DeGeneres. And I'm like, these kids don't know who Ellen DeGeneres is. And, I'm not an Oprah fan, but then again, I'm not an Oprah hater either. I'm just not one of these people who worships the ground she walks on. But I thought it was very out of place and out of context and inappropriate. The first piece they did was about Alexander Hamilton, and instead of really discussing who he was or what he did, he's white and he owned slaves and slavery is bad and so on and so forth. And they get down to the last one, which was really cool. I don't exactly know how to describe it. It was almost like a black metal snowflake. It was actually a really cool piece of art. But they didn't really discuss anything about the art itself, just how the artist was one of the people rounded up in a Japanese intern camp or concentration camp back during World War II. And, I'm not going to say, oh, that didn't happen, or, oh, who cares? I mean, yeah, it's relevant that people had to suffer through that crap, but she's drawing lines and comparing it to modern Islamophobia, and all in all, I was very disappointed that the whole experience at the museum was not about art. It was about political isms, racism, sexism. I don't even know what Islamophobia calls it. Islamism. But it's just sad that this is where our world's come to. We have a very divided culture, and people are just it feels like people are doing everything they can to further divide. I mean, we're to the point. Yeah, I realize I'm saying and I mean a lot. Hey, this is my first shot at actually doing a video. I'm driving on the freeway. Crazy Arkansas drivers. But I've commented before. I guess I'm what you'd call a centrist because I grew up in a red state. I've lived here all my life. Very, very conservative environment. All my life I thought I was a liberal because I'm like, screw you. I don't want to have to believe what you say I have to believe. I don't want to act how you say I have to act. I want to be me. I've always known I was different from everybody else. And, that gave me my fight. And nowadays, it's the other way around. I mean, you've got... I don't want to call myself a liberal anymore because the liberals have gone so batshit crazy off the deep end. Instead of saying you have to believe this, they're saying you can't believe this. And everything is so divided, whether it's Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Dog Lives Matter. What the fuck? And it's so divided that everybody's got this, if you're not with us, you're against us mentality. I watched The Red Pill a couple nights ago. Yeah, that's the big thing everybody's talking about. I'm not an MRA, though I could easily be. I very much identified with several things that were, with several of the stories that were told. I have myself experienced some of the issues that they're battling, and it would have been nice to have a movement to help me back when I went through that. But, it was pretty well stated, and I think the Red Pill is one of the best things that's happened in a while, because there are actually feminists that are saying, okay, maybe these guys have got a little bit of a point. They're not necessarily switching sides, but they're willing to listen. They're willing to have a discussion. And that's really the only way that the hate's going to end, whether it's misandry or misogyny. The people wanting equality are going to have to want equality. And the problem with modern feminism, modern racism, I don't care if you're talking about Black Lives Matters or white nationalists or whatever, it's all racism. And it's all about superiority. And I'm actually a fan of Martin Luther King because he's like, I dream of a world where we can stand side by side and, forget about the past and be equals and who cares? And that's the only way we're gonna end all of these isms, is for the people on the opposite sides to stop, take a step back, and actually listen to what the other side has to say. I mean, I'm a notorious arguer. It drives my wife nuts that I will argue about literally anything, even if I don't believe what I'm arguing. And a lot of that is because I'm willing to listen to the other side. I'm willing to, say, hey, I could be wrong. I might as well listen. And if I'm not wrong, if I know the other side's wrong, then I need to listen to the other side so I can actually figure out what it is, why they're wrong, what is the problem with Islam? What is the problem with Black Lives Matter? What is the problem with feminism? Hell, what is the problem with men's rights activists? I'll attack both sides. What's the problem with All Lives Matter? What's the problem with Blue Lives Matter? Because all of them have a problem. They're out for their own self-interest, and they're not willing to listen to anybody else's side. I mean, back when I was growing up, it's It was the church, the Christians. I, you know, I'll get into my religious beliefs later, but, you know, even if I happen to believe certain things that go along with the Christian dichotomy, I don't identify as a Christian because, in my experience, most Christians suck. And too many of them are way too dogmatic. You know, I believe that you should be able to believe whatever you want to believe. And I grew up saying, hey, there's only one way to believe. There's only one church you can go to. And, I mean, it wasn't just Christianity. It was down to the denomination. And the church that I went to, if you accused them of being a denomination, oh, they went batshit. Because they weren't a denomination. They were the real church. But it's frustrating. But now they're just, at this point, they're fighting just to survive, to keep their foothold, you know, instead of trying to force everybody else to believe what they believe, they're having to fight just to be allowed to believe what they believe. And, you know, suddenly you've got this massive force that's been my enemy for most of my life, and all of a sudden I'm kind of feeling for them, and I'm wanting to back them up a little bit and say, hey, you know, you should be able to believe what you want to believe. Now, stop before you try and make me believe it, but you go right ahead and believe what you want to believe. You know, even if it's, oh, I can't remember his name, whatever great lord the Scientologists have, you know, I think they're batshit too. But, hey, they got a right to it. At the same time, every time I try and, you know, I start saying, okay, maybe the church has got a point, then they go and do something stupid and piss me off again. Like, right now, you've got the local churches and the local church-run college are battling so hard because these two restaurants in town want to get liquor license. Oh, by the way, I live in a dry county. And if you don't know what that is, basically they are not allowed to sell or serve alcohol. We do not have any liquor stores. We don't have any bars. We don't have any restaurant that you can just go and have a beer. What we do have, we've got like the VFW and the Elks Lodge and the Country Club. You've got a few private clubs, all of them outside city limits. In fact, one of these clubs, city limits, literally goes around. It exists on a little island that's considered part of the county, not part of the city, because they couldn't serve alcohol in the city. And what had happened for ages is the college had bought up all the liquor license because, yes, even though we're in a wet county, there is still a certain amount of liquor license that can be given out to private establishments. And the college bought them all up and just sat on them so nobody else could use them. And apparently recently some laws or rules changed and they had to let some of them go. And now you've got a couple restaurants that are trying to get a hold of them, and they are going batshit. The churches are sending out letters and they're telling all their members to send out letters. And the college is sending out letters and they're telling all their students to send out letters because they're afraid that their college kids are going to run across the street and have a beer at this restaurant. And, you know, personally, I'm not much of a drinker. I used to drink a lot. I've never been really a beer drinker, but in recent years I've gotten to the point where I just don't enjoy drinking as much, but I'll have a beer on occasion. And, you know, it'd be nice. I go to a Mexican restaurant, I'd like to have a margarita. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to have 6 of them and then try and drive home, but I don't know. It's a really divisive topic. And it's hard for people like me who sit in the middle because everybody hates me. The Christians hate me because I'm not taking their side. The atheists hate me because I'm not taking their side. Now, I had something else I was going to bring up, and I've drawn a total blank on what it is. Thank God for editing. Hope